weeks ago, I had a rare and special opportunity. My best friend, we've been friends since we were in middle school. Super cool, we met in the Writers Club. Obviously, we're very popular. He's just completed his PhD. And I went up to Boston to hear him defend his dissertation. This has been the labor of love. It is not so easy to go back to school in your 40s and complete such a monumental task. I watched him defend, and his presentation seemed effortless, but I knew through a series of blood, sweat, and tear-soaked text messages that this process had been nigh on impossible. It had been so difficult. Often, and especially the closer he got to the end, the more he would say, why did I even begin this? What was I thinking? So there he was, in this moment that looked effortless, but I knew that it had been something that had nearly broken him in two. I'm so proud of him. What an accomplishment. And I thought about any monumental accomplishment, any large undertaking that any of us might start. I think about my sister and her 3 kids, 2 teenage girls and a 7-year-old. Yeah, exactly. If she had known all of the bits and pieces, if she had known what it would be like to have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old and a 7-year-old at the same time, I wonder if she might have rethought the whole project from the beginning. All of us, I think, are involved in our own ways in tasks that seem too monumental to complete once we get them started. Anything that we endeavor to do, if it's marriage, if it's raising children, if it's owning a business, all of the major things of our lives can feel like they are way too big once you get yourself hip deep in the mess. That's why I find Jesus' words today so difficult. Imagine Jesus, he's just been doing a series of sort of house meetings, house calls. In our last week's gospel, he was in the house of one of the Pharisees having dinner, and he was giving one kind of advice, but today he's on the road. And he's been on the road really since way back in chapter 9, and he's not on the road to go to Disneyland. He's on the road to Jerusalem. This is not going to be easy. And he's surrounded, our gospel says he is surrounded by throngs of people. It's kind of like a party. It's kind of like a festival. It'd be like if the Beatles walked from, Birmingham to London or something. Thronged by people who are caught up in the excitement, the thrill, the moment. And Jesus takes the time to turn around and say, this is more. What he describes in our gospel today is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer described as the cost of discipleship. The cost of discipleship. He says, Jesus says, sit down and figure this out. Have a moment to cool off the emotions and take a second to really ask yourself where it is that you're going. And why are you going there? Jesus knows in his own heart, in his own mind, in his own spirit, where he's going and why he's going there. Do the people who have come with him in that moment know? When we get to the Holy Week part, the Good Friday part, those crowds will have dissipated quite a lot. Not a lot of people left there at the end. The cost of discipleship is high. So why would we bother? Why would we engage with following Jesus if it's so hard? If in our commitment to our faith, there are times when we might have to draw a clear, bright line and say, I can't go any further than this. This is my boundary. I like to think about this passage from Jeremiah as a contrast. God is drawing a clear, bright line for his people, his chosen people, the nation of Israel. God's not too pleased with them. God has called for justice, and they've given him wantonness. God has asked them to care for the widow and the orphan, and they've paid them lip service and moved on. God has asked for more. God has asked the people to live lives that are consistent with the gift of life that he has given them. And the people have let him down. So God takes his prophet, someone who was supposed to be a priest and to have a career change early in life, became a prophet. And God says, go down to the potter's house. That's a strange thing to ask. Which of us has been asked by God, go down to see the shoe repair guy. Go to watch that gal at the checkout line at Lavance. I'm going to give you a message there. Go down to the potter's house. And as Jeremiah watches this potter throw pots, these important vessels for daily life. We don't do a lot with pottery now. All of my cookware is made out of cast iron and enamel, thank God. But pots were essential to daily life. It's your cookware. It's how you carried water, what you ate from, drank from. And he watches the potter do his thing. The potter makes a mistake in a piece of pottery. And so, even though he's worked on it for a while, and any of you who are potters or any other kind of craftsman know, it is such a drag, and you've been working on something for a while, and you make a fatal error, and you've got to mash it up, try again. I love this image of God because God is asking Jeremiah to imagine God like this potter. Not as a tyrant, not as the angry sky god getting ready to smash the people like a bug, but rather as a master craftsman who, in the words of the psalmist, wants to wonderfully and fearfully make the people. Who knows the people, knows us, knows each of us so beautifully that we were knit together, the psalmist says, in our mother's womb. How precious, how tender that image is. Psalm 139 is, I think, my favorite psalm. For that very reason that when I read it, I remember how seen I am, how known I am, how intimate our relationship with God is. We pray in the collect for purity, that God knows all our thoughts. And not in the sense of like the KGB bugging the phone, but rather the sense of intimacy and connection. And so God says to Jeremiah, I know these people so intimately, so well, that I can see when you're going in a bad direction. Let's start again and redirect. Let's be reformed. What a beautiful image. That to be corrected in our path, to be reformed and remolded and reshaped, to be fired as a more beautiful vessel. That's God's work. When we trust God to direct where we're going in our lives, when we allow God's word, when we allow these sacraments, when we allow our own study of the word, our prayer lives, our relationships to shape who we are, individually, as a congregation, as a people, we are opening ourselves up to the possibility of being reformed into something more beautiful, more useful, more valuable. The cost of discipleship, Jesus says, is high. We decide that there are things and places and ways that we want to go, and places where we're not going to go. I'm troubled and I've made no hash of this. I'm troubled by the increased incidence of racism and homophobia that I read about and see in our society. I think there's a clear, bright line for us here. I'm troubled by the way and the language that people use about each other that dehumanizes. And if I think each one of us has made wondrously, then there's a clear, bright line for us here. Each one of us is created and being created, has been made and is being remade in this beautiful way that God wants to make us. It is not ours to denigrate any other person, but to recognize the inherent value and humanity of the other people that we meet, regardless of their commitments, of their background. We have the opportunity in our own lives and in our world to open ourselves up to being remade, to following Christ and standing up even when it's difficult. In these moments, we have the time to count the cost of discipleship and say sometimes it won't always feel good and it won't always be fun. And other times, like in our psalm, we have the opportunity to remember how joyful, how extravagant, how marvelous it is to participate in this life of faith together. Discipleship is a lot. Sometimes it's rough. But the joy that we experience when we come together, open to what God wants for our lives, both as people and as a community, it's worth the cost to me. In the name of God, amen.